Man, they were not joking when they said this is going to be a long read, just like Lone Trail. 10 chapters, complicated German words every 2 sentences, and then just when you thought the bad guy was dead, it was only chapter 6. But you know what? I still had a lot of fun reading this. They toned down considerably the excruciating gibberish from usual Arknights story events. The lore that was given to us was meaningful, as in it matters right now or it matters very soon. And then there were lots of good character development. The new characters that were introduced were great, and other characters were great too. There were 3 characters that stood out to me the most. One of them, Executor, the second, Loris, and then finally, to no one's surprise, Arturia. Executor, I'm going to call him Fed. He is surprisingly not a very liked character, especially prior to Hocus Pocus, or whatever that event's name was called. He was basically a nobody before that. Now, he's one of my favorite characters. One of his roles in this story was comic relief, but the other role, I feel like, was even more important than that. Arknights dialogue is, at times, very complex. There's so much lore, there's so many terms you need to know, and it just goes on and on and on. Gibberish. So that's what Fed is for. He brings it back down to earth. He gives it straight. The I don't care, I'm gonna arrest you anyways. I have rules I need to follow. It's a good balance between complex writing and simple, humorous one-liners. In a way, he's more relatable than anyone else. He's not obsessed with emotions, strings or threads, or destroying his lineage. He's just there to carry out his duty. And because he's so lifeless and a seemingly soulless person, his character development is fun. There's a couple of instances in which you see this robot stop being a robot. When Arturia is caught and carried away by the executioners, you can clearly tell he's not happy. I mean, it's his sister after all. Or what about when Yulia's soul finally dissipates? He feels a discomforting emotion for the first time. All of this is fun. It's fun to watch him grow. And we can't talk about Executor without talking about Loris. Loris had a tragic ending. He dies way too early. Chapter 2, in fact. We just met him, we like him, and then he just dies. I feel like we needed him to continue because of the amazing dynamic he had with Fed. By the time you realize how fun he is with Fed, he's dead. And then his story is tragedy because he calls himself a coward. He doesn't think he's a hero, but he really was. He cared for Yulia's brother. He was a hero when he saved Ebenholz. Arturia brings out his deepest emotions, his desires, and so he goes down, sacrifices himself, and Ebenholz gets away. All of this is the theme of being fatigued with life. He dedicated most of his life, 15 years or so, to finding the truth of Yulia's disappearance, his love, the girl that he proposed to, but never found her. Thankfully, Fed carries out his will and finds her in the end, although she's not exactly well herself. Let's talk about Viviana. Her story was sad. It was certainly sad, but it didn't resonate that much with me. Maybe it was because she just comes back to say goodbye to her dying father, and then she doesn't make it in time. He's killed, he's murdered, and so because of that, she becomes an investigator. And that's basically her character for most of the story. I'd really hate to say the B word, but her character was more boring than Fed. Compared to how fun Fed was, she was mostly a drag. I just wasn't too interested in her family's backstory. But it's not like it was all bad. It wasn't bad at all. It was just fine. The end of the story had a great message. No matter how or what path she could have taken, suffering was inevitable. It was about regret, that you shouldn't regret the decisions you've made. Just keep pressing forward. All potential lives that she could have lived involved some form of suffering. Cora, another tragic end. Potentially more tragic than Loris. I like this character. I liked her for multiple reasons. Cora was another sacrifice. Long ago, she was instructed to become essentially a double agent, to become bait, a fake concert master to lure the echoes into their own demise. She believed her death to be deserved since it was her doing that so many died. I found this to be easily the saddest moment in the story for me. But it did feel like her death was forced, like they couldn't think of another way to go about this to save her. Rest easy, sexy blind lady. Ebenholz, man, this poor guy. It's like a comedic tragedy. He's mainly here just to suffer some more after the last event, and then remnants from the last event are here to haunt him again. At least this time he made a friend that probably won't die this time because he's Rhodes Island operator. Old Cranky, the king of liches. I didn't really care about this guy, or I didn't care for this guy at first, but I ended up really enjoying his company. Despite being hundreds or thousands of years old, his dialogue was one of the least complicated. You'd think he'd be the type to just talk in riddles all the time and tell you things that don't make any sense but only make sense to him. We got to learn more about the liches and how they worked. They're not narcissists that only care about knowledge. This guy almost sacrifices himself to save the city by holding the void back with his threads. And we got to see, despite his hatred and disappointment for the Witch King, he was still sad that he had to exile him. As for the Witch King, unlike old Cranky, this guy talked like a typical know-it-all deity in AK, you know what I'm talking about. This guy did not die a true death in the first story. His soul transcended into the void just so he could continue his study endlessly. We got to understand the kings and his motives better, but it didn't make him any more likable. Yeah, he knows the secret behind Originium and wants to end the creator, and he tells of a great calamity coming to Terra soon, but he was still a jerk. He was still a dictator. He was still a tyrant. And of course, old Cranky finishes him, thus ending the rule of the most powerful caster in Terran history. Alright, final character, Arturia. Oh boy. I like this character. I liked her when I got her in the gacha first, and now I like her even more. She's still a little crazy, but now it makes sense why. Like her little brother, she lacks a piece of her humanity, just in a different way. This makes sense. She had to learn these powers at such a young age, which I'm going to assume tore her apart. It left her an emotionless husk. We learned that her objective is to fight against the law, empathy, or rather, to fight for an ideal future where everyone can obtain an ego consisting of a like-minded heart, where we can help each other out regardless of race or status. Towards the end of the story, when she confronts the Witch King, he basically tells her she's like a broken mirror, saying that she's the furthest away from her own future. And because of those words, it's the first time in the story where you can see that she got hit hard by this. She heeds his words, she agrees that she's like an empty, broken vessel. All of this emotion she's gathered from all these different types of places, from different times, yet she's still exactly the same. You can't preach what you don't practice. Her mini redemption arc comes at the end when people are suffering from the zombie-like hallucinations. She saves them. For the first time, she plays a song for herself. I didn't quite understand this part too well. It was a little bit confusing. I just know she was trying to use her powers in a better way, to let the emotions fill her rather than reflect off her, I guess. But of course, Fed says, thanks for saving the citizens, but I need to arrest you. It was his original objective after all. But before that happens, the Pope swoops in at the last minute and declares her a saint of Laterano. All of this is because he needs her to prep for the upcoming calamities. He needs her on their side. Now we just need the story behind her obsession with the doctor. So what are my overall thoughts? Well, I wouldn't rank it higher than Lone Trail, but this was really good. I think it's up there. I know I didn't talk about every character, but I think you get the gist of how I felt. It was good. It was fun. Honestly, the most confusing parts were when they just used a bunch of German words and you either had to look them up or just keep going. And again, I really like the dynamic of the two crazy siblings. It's fun to read. It only makes me want more, and I hope they come back for the next one. Making another event story review video made me realize how bad we need an Arknights lore master for Yan. One of our previous lore master barely uploads anymore, and every other big content creator we have in the space doesn't really do much for it. Besides Frostbite, who makes summaries, which is nice, but I'm sure they're really busy with other content. I'm not well versed in the lore enough to be that guy. We need someone better than me. And I also like to produce non-lore related content. Let me know if you know of a dedicated creator that makes quality content on lore. I'd love to shout them out in the next review video if they consistently upload and just don't read the wiki. The final verdict I will give this event is Old Cranky's interesting word choice out of 10. Alright guys, thanks for watching. More Arknights content is on the way, so stay frosty. See ya.